intention of Natural Freedom League is to expand the understanding of natural law, which is based on objective morality, and to expose the illegitimacy of the belief in authority, and thus the inherent immorality of all government.
We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the
Hello everybody, we're back once again with Natural Freedom League. You can find us at naturalfreedomleague.com. I am John Rowland here with my producer and co-host, Chill Will Keller. What's up, Will?
What's up, brother? How's it going, man?
It's going good, man.
Yeah, awesome.
Just been kind of a lazy day, honestly. It's a Saturday when we're recording this.
Well, we're here now, ready to dive in.
Yeah.
It's going to be a fun episode.
Yeah. This is one that's actually I'm pretty well versed in. And I have this handy dandy book, which is actually the theme of the episode. It's called The Emperor Wears No Clothes, written by Jack Herer. Jack Herer. You probably know the name. I think there's a strain named after him. Jack Herer, he was a proponent of hemp. He believed that hemp could save the world. And he had an interesting story. The way I learned about him, came up, got into token the doja, as we used to like to say. And, was involved. We had a hip hop group called the Partners Productions, and our album was 420. And it was all about legalize it. This is like 1998. And we were kind of involved with the, there was Proposition 215 for medical marijuana. Right around that time. I think it might have been 96. And that was like right when we started doing our little hip hop stuff. It was actually, that specific stuff was inspired by the political stuff going on at the time. Dang, this is crazy to think about. But so we would go, there was like this Cannabis Action Network in Berkeley. We would go there. And so it was all the push for the medical. And that's when the medical first came legal. I believe it was 96 or 98, one of those years. And so, it was a different time back then. Anyway, I ended up going to college, of course, Humboldt State University. And when I was up there, that's where I learned about this book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, the authoritative historical record of cannabis and the conspiracy against marijuana and how hemp can save the world. So it's pretty interesting. Have you ever heard about Jack Herer besides what I told you about him, Will?
Yeah, I have. I actually haven't looked into that book. Excuse me. But there's another one that's good too. It's Hemp and the Marijuana Conspiracy. The guy's name is John Jiggins. So that one, and then The Emperor Wears No Clothes are like, the gold standard of looking into this topic.
Yeah.
So you must have got that flag when you were in Humboldt.
Yeah, no, I got it later.
Yeah.
I got it later, but yeah, definitely the same inspiration,
Yeah, man.
And when I learned about Jack Herer, everyone always says Herer, but it's Herer. He says terror like terror. So
it depends if you got sativa or indica.
Yeah, right. Seriously. And so his story was he grew up kind of a straight kid and went to the military and kind of looked down on the hippie movement and everything that was going on. And then later in his life, he got divorced, and then he was dating a girl, and she asked him if he had ever smoked, and he hadn't, so he tried it, and then he was like amazed at all these sensations he was having, and he was wondering why it was illegal. And then he started learning about why it was illegal, and he ended up discovering, he wrote a little book about it with this guy, and he got involved in the legalizing it movement back then, or the decriminalization of marijuana. And then he wrote a little book that kind of became a cult classic. It was called Grass. And then all these people started telling him, hey, did you know that cannabis can also, make clothes and make rope and make oil and medicine and all this stuff? And he was like, what? He couldn't believe what was going on. And so he was in around the 1980s, he was registering people to vote to legalize hemp and marijuana. And he was doing it on federal property. And I guess that was the time when Reagan was just coming in. And so Reagan used some law that made it illegal for him to be on federal property registering people. And he ended up getting arrested for it. And he fought them. He didn't pay the fine, and he fought them, and it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court wouldn't hear the case. And so he ended up doing jail time. And then while he was in jail, he says he was in jail with a bunch of like bank robbers and stuff. And they asked him what he was in there for. And he said, registering people to vote on federal property. And they're like, that's illegal?
Oh my gosh. That's fucking classic.
I mean, it's just perfect example of the state, and just Reagan comes in, and all of a sudden he can just change the law, or
yep, exactly. These relativists
reinterpret some old statute that's there or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, while Jack Herer was in jail, he compiled this book, and it basically has the history of hemp in the world and in America, and shows you the conspiracy against hemp, against marijuana, right? And which is the same plant, right? The cannabis part, right? Or I guess there's hemp and cannabis, right?
Cannabis sativa is the genome name. Marijuana is when it flowers and it produces THC.
Yeah.
And it's it's shorter and bushier as well. Hemp can grow like 20 feet tall.
Yeah. And hemp is the male plant, and cannabis is the female plant.
Hemp can be male or female, but the marijuana is the female plant that will flower and produce the THC.
Yeah. So. And that word marijuana was coined by Rudolph Randolph. Was his name Randolph Hearst? Randolph Hearst?
I think so.
William Hearst.
William
Randolph Hearst. I said Rudolph.
It's the Hempisode.
The Hempisode. Yeah. But yeah. And he coined the term marijuana to make it sound not like the medical term, because cannabis was the medical term. And so in his newspapers, William Randolph Hearst coined the term, and to make it sound more like heroin, like dangerous. And that was a big part of the propaganda push in the mid 30s to criminalize marijuana. But really, See, that was the thing that I realized in the way it was eye-opening to me, was that the whole focus of the movement was about medical and kind of recreational, right? That you should be able to do it, but no one talked about the hemp part of it. And really, it's probably that they were targeting because it conflicted with their interests, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. That's like a classic tactic the state does, right? It's like the Trojan horse. So
Exactly. Yeah, they're like, made it like a drug issue, right? Like Reefer Madness was a propaganda film that came out in the mid 30s, and it, had this guy in a black hat, like, psst, like selling them weed, and then they go crazy.
yeah.
The women start getting all freaky,
Yep.
and they like jump out the window or something like that. Like total propaganda film, Reefer Madness. You guys could probably look it up online if you've never seen it.
Yeah, that came out when, in like the 70s or the 60s?
It was the 30s.
It was the 30s they did that commercial?
It was a movie, Reefer Madness.
It was a movie. Got it.
Yeah,
I've seen some commercials they had too. I think it was like in the 60s.
Yeah.
That was oh man, they were just ridiculous. One person takes one little hit and then he's like scratching the walls and shit.
Yeah.
Fucking crazy, the propaganda, man. We're talking about a sacred plant that goes back ancient times, man. This plant's got so much benefit.
Yeah. And that's what's kind of interesting about it too, because the way that it coincides with what's going on now with the medical industry, the hijacking of the medical industry. The idea behind this book that Jack Herrera is saying is that ultimately, because back then, obviously, and still now, environment is always an issue. You want to keep the environment healthy, and you don't want to chop down all the forests if you don't have to. Well, hemp can replace all of that damage that's done to the to the environment by the economy, right? The oil extraction that could be replaced by hemp. Again, medicines can be replaced by hemp. Medicines now are mostly petrochemicals. They're oil-based medicines, so they're part of the oil industry and the Rockefeller Medical Foundation. Rockefeller Medicine, they took over all the schools, basically standardized allopathic medicine, pharmaceuticals, and hemp was clearly in conflict with all of that. So it conflicted with oil, conflicted with medicine, food. You could make, if they were making for starving people, they're making food out of corn, right? Like they subsidize corn. So all these farmers grow corn and they make cornmeal. Well, you could do hemp. It's way healthier.
Way healthier.
It's got all the omega fatty acids.
Yeah, and it's the ratio is 3-to-1 with omega 6 and the amino acids and omega 3. It's just phenomenal. The benefits of it as well. I mean, the health aspects. It's funny in the 30s too. They were getting rid of like all the natural remedies at that time. So that was one of the biggest ones, which this country, like it almost built with hemp, right? I mean, financially and just hemp can be grown almost anywhere you can grow corn, oats, and that kind of shit. You can grow, cannabis, hemp.
Right.
So,
and part of the issue in the 30s, or right around that time, that according to this documentary, that after the Civil War, hemp wasn't as easy to produce because hemp took a lot of labor. It's very labor intensive. And so a lot of slavery was used to work the hemp and to process the hemp.
Yeah.
And so at least that's what the video was saying. And so hemp was harder to use, harder to process than cotton. So after the Civil War, hemp kind of dropped in usage compared to cotton for certain things, right? And then, but it wasn't until around the 1930s that DuPont developed some type of petrochemical that would be used in the logging industry to create paper out of wood, out of trees. And then they also developed nylon at that time. So nylon rope instead of hemp rope, which was always used before. And
which nylon is way weaker than hemp. Hemp is way more durable than nylon.
Yeah.
Which is it's part of the marketing, right? You don't want something to last a long time. You got to have it break and break down, and so you can get new shit.
And same with like the clothing. It's way better material use for clothing. With the paper, you could replace an acre of hemp in a year, but you can't replace an acre of trees, for, half a century or a year, 100 years,
Yeah. It produces large yield in a very short period of time. So its growth cycle is extremely fast.
And that acre of hemp makes more paper than the acre of trees as well. Another interesting thing that's in this book is around that time as well. So the prohibition happened in 1937. Around that time, someone invented a machine called the decorticator that made it easier to process the hemp. And he actually has in this book where it's in Popular Science. Mm-hmm. It's going to change the industry and all of this. And it was like in 1936, the decorticator came out. In 1937, they made it illegal. They put a prohibition. They put a tax on it, basically, is what they did. And so I guess only certain people could grow it, something like that.
Yeah. The Farm Bill, wasn't that what it was called? It's called the Farm Bill.
I don't know that one was. I mean, at least when they made it illegal, I think there was a Farm Bill more recently.
Gotcha.
There's a Farm Bill more recently. This bill was like in when they first made the prohibition against hemp. The more current Farm Bill, I think they actually legalized some hemp growth. But it's been illegal up until if it is legal now. I'm not 100% sure. I think it may still be illegal technically, unless you have some type of government contract. It's the same way with the way marijuana is legalized now. Now you've got to jump through all these hoops, and they're busting people who are growing, because they're not getting all the licenses. They're growing in their home or whatever, but they're running an operation where they're selling it on the streets. And there was just a couple of busts in the Bay Area for that. So the legalization of marijuana is not really all it was cracked up to be.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's just another outlet for the state government and pharmaceutical companies to try to capitalize on that.
Exactly.
Which, I want to say this too. It's here's another example of control by a ruling class. You have human beings that call themselves government, right? The state, that are saying you're not allowed to put this in your body, or you're not allowed to grow this. They're trying to claim something that's in the natural world that grows in the earth. You can never make a claim on anything. Well, you can make the claim, but you can't actually own something in the natural world. That's just an artificial construct. So
yeah, and it's interesting too, because they they're just putting a prohibition on it. It's like they know that they can't, because they have that law where they can't you can't patent it if it comes from nature, right?
Yeah.
And so then they want to genetically modify everything so then they can patent it, right? And you know, that's kind of the Monsanto approach, right? Is they were like genetically modifying these seeds, and then those seeds would mix in with other farmer seeds who were growing their own, and they would come over and be like, oh, we have a patent, and now your seeds have our genetic material, so now that's all ours. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's interesting what you just said, right? They said they genetically modify the seed, right? And then they claim ownership on it because it's their product, is what their claim is.
Right.
That's similar to a genetic modification that's going on now to fight this so-called virus, right? That's going into people's bodies, and they have patents on that shit as well. So you got, you know, people that are getting the needlecraft, you know, they have product inside of them.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and someone's gonna more likely to make a claim on them because they've been altered by their product, right?
Yeah.
They've been made somewhat artificial, right?
Exactly. And that's all it can ever be, is just a claim. Someone can only make the claim. You can still, your body is still your own. So,
exactly.
You know, you got to step in your power regardless if you've jumped on that.
Yeah, no, that's true. I was thinking that too. It's like they can make the claim, and that's how their imaginary system works, right? To get us all to consent to all of this nonsense and all this criminality. But the part of the apocalypse, the unveiling, I think, is realizing that we don't have to participate in it, and we can separate from it. Mm-hmm. And if we were to do that, and hemp would definitely be a useful thing to know to grow. I mean, just growing any plants in general is going to be important in the future to be like self-sustaining. And so yeah, but definitely it's interesting to learn all the things that hemp can do. So I'm going to go over a brief summary of the uses of hemp. It was used on ships and sailors. 90% of all ships' sails since before the Phoenicians, from at least the 5th century BC until long after the invention and commercialization of steamships, mid to late 19th century, were made from hemp. So ships and sailors, textile and fabrics. Until the 1820s in America and until the 20th century in most of the rest of the world, 80% of all textiles and fabrics used for clothing, tents, bed sheets and linens, rugs, drapes, quilts, towels, diapers, etc., and even our flag, Old Glory, were principally made from fibers of cannabis. It must be noted that approximately 50% of all chemicals used in American agriculture today are used in cotton growing. Hemp needs no chemicals and has few weed or insect enemies. Fiber and pulp paper. Until 1883, from 75 to 90% of all paper in the world was made with cannabis hemp fiber, including that for books, Bibles, maps, paper money, stocks and bonds, newspapers, etc. The first draft of the Declaration of Independence was written on Dutch hemp paper, as was the second draft, completed on July 2nd, 1776. This was the document actually agreed to on that day and announced and released on July 4th, 1776. Who cares? That's statism. No, just kidding.
Dutch masters. It's right there, man. People are rolling shit up. It says Dutch masters.
Well, another thing that's interesting is, according to Jack Herer, and again, you can find the source, I'm sure, in this book, is that the word canvas is the Dutch pronunciation of cannabis. So canvas covered wagons were cannabis covered wagons, right?
Yeah.
I think the first Levi jeans were canvas, right?
Yeah.
The ship sails, all that stuff, you know, that's rope, right. Twine and cordage, art canvases, paints and varnishes, lighting oil, biomass energy. In the early 1900s, Henry Ford and other futuristic organic engineering geniuses recognized, as their intellectual scientific heirs still do today, an important point, that up to 90% of all fossil fuel used in the world today, coal, oil, natural gas, etc., should long ago have been replaced with biomass, such as corn stalks, cannabis, waste paper, and the like. Biomass can be converted to methane, methanol, or gasoline at a fraction of the current cost of oil, coal, or nuclear energy, especially when environmental costs are factored in, and its mandated use would end acid rain, end sulfur-based smog, and reverse the greenhouse effect on our planet right now. My thing is, at this point, I mean, you know, my thing is you could just do less oil, right? You just slowly replace it. I don't know that you necessarily need to like make a law. You know, obviously I don't agree with that, right?
Yeah.
It's more about education, right?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And listen up, Bill Gates. Look, all the shit you just listed, man. I mean, the world would be a completely different place, you know, more in harmony with nature, just by one fucking plant, hemp. I mean, there's so much you can do: roads, houses. I mean, you just listed a whole bunch of stuff, not to mention feed animals, you know, fuel, all that stuff. And
medicine.
You know, Bill Gates so worried about climate change and shit, and how many hemp episodes does he have?
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's, you know, again, it's people need to understand this. Again, get in touch with nature, realize that there's an abundance in nature to support us, and you know, hemp is one of those main resources that we have, that, you know, we need to figure out how to develop and process, and, you know, even on like small sustainable farms.
Yeah. Plus all the medicinal uses, right? The oils, you know, like fighting cancer, diseases. You know, Rick Simpson is infamous for his oil, THC oil, and psychiatric care, like all this stuff, man. I mean, simple meditation. I mean, we can spend all night going off the list.
Yeah.
So it's just phenomenal.
Yeah. He gets into in this about how the conspiracy against hemp happened, where it was basically right around that time. It was Henry Anslinger was the first drug czar, and Andrew Mellon was involved. He was Hoover's Secretary of the Treasury, and Henry Anslinger was his nephew-in-law. And he headed, again, the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. And you had Hearst, who was making paper out of trees. And so he was putting out these stories, propaganda about it. And even with all that, when they passed the law in 1937, they did it in the middle of the night. They didn't use the term cannabis. They didn't have any, you know, doctors were like aware of what was going on.
Yeah.
So
for sure. Yeah, the doctors were too busy promoting cigarettes.
Yeah, exactly. I think, you know, some of the doctors probably would have wanted to speak up at that time, but again, they're already a part of that system where you're pretty much going to get run over by the industry.
Yeah, following orders.
Yeah, exactly. You know, that reminds me of this Manly P. Hall podcast, where he talked about how being a physician had changed over time, and that the pharmacist used to make his own medicines, right? and his homeopathic remedies and things like that. But then once this, and he talks about it, he calls them pharmaceutical houses. I think he calls them back in the day whenever he was making this lecture. It's on YouTube. We could maybe link to it in the notes. But he's talking about how slowly the pharmaceutical houses started taking over, and then the pharmacist was less in touch with the practice of actually healing his patients. And then the pharmaceutical industry would go straight to advertising. And that would make a situation where the people would come into the doctor and they would say, hey, have you heard about this? You know, I've got this issue. Have you heard about this drug? And the doctor hadn't even heard about it yet. Right?
Yeah.
It was direct to consumer from the pharmaceutical houses. And so, yeah, it changed the whole relationship between doctor and patient. And just between the practice of being a doctor anyway, you know, a healer is what it should be called, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. For sure. To be a healer and to heal, for healing to be to take place, you have to understand the causes. Doctors today in the allopathic industry, they're just like fucking salesmen, right? I mean, it's very impersonable. Even the knowledge that it's based on is not really fully in tune with the natural world and how the body, you know, operates.
Yeah.
It's merely just dealing with the symptoms. You know, they're gonna prescribe you one medication, and it might be a Band-Aid for what you went in for one issue, but it will create 2 or 3 other issues. It's like,
yeah, you know, we've talked about this before, but the definition of allopathy, an allopathic drug, which is what the mainstream model is you give people a chemical, you know, that it stops the symptoms that you're having, but it creates other symptoms. Mm-hmm. Right? So you have side effects from it. Yeah. But it stops, you know, so if you have like a stomach issue, it stops the stomach issue, but now it causes you to be dizzy, or it like does something else to you. That's the definition of allopathic medicine. And then the definition of homeopathic medicine is taking a natural, you know, product, or, you know, ingesting something, you know, but usually it's from nature, right? And then, which really all chemicals, right, ultimately come from nature, right? So ultimately it's the same idea, but, you know, I think homeopathy is usually a plant-based thing, where allopathic medicine could be more, you know, chemical based, or, but anyway, so, but homeopathy, it gives you the same symptoms of the disease, but then it makes you immune to it. It gives you, it really is what vaccination is supposed to be. Yeah. Right, is claimed to be the idea of giving you a little bit of something that gives you the same reaction, and then your body
heals it.
Exactly.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but yeah, that's fantastic for sure. And, you know, and speaking about, you know, healers and how back in the day, I mean, the healer understood plants, understood astrology, they understood the energy and the essence and the elements of these plants, of the you know, natural medicine, and they understood the body. So they knew how to balance out that polarity, right? Yeah. When there was dis-ease in the body or the psyche.
So, and it's amazing to think about that. You know, the famous story of the how did they figure out the 2 ingredients for ayahuasca, right, to make it work? Because the way that the 2 ingredients work is, if you take one, your stomach acids kill it. That's the part of it that makes you have a reaction, that makes you have, that kicks in. That's the DMT. but your stomach has an acid that naturally kills it. So they found another plant in the Amazon rainforest that went with it that breaks down those stomach acids or whatever it is that kills the DMT, and it allows the DMT to take hold and for you to have a reaction to it and to have that spiritual experience of doing DMT. So when they asked them how they knew, like they asked the shamans, how did they know to pick these two plants? And the shamans would say that the plants told them, you know?
Exactly. Yep. For sure. I mean, that is, you know, that is true intelligence. Most modern scientists or doctors would think that is primitive. Oh yeah, there was some other kind of cause or something like that, but it's quite literal.
Yeah.
Right. You know, but they're operating at a completely different level of consciousness where they're in tune with the natural world. So the exchange of information that nature is doing all around us all the time, they're able to tap into that. So,
Yeah.
and that's where, you know, humans they've severed that connection from nature, from spirit, from God. Really, it's what we're talking about. Nature, God. You can use whatever word you want. So. Yeah, it's a trip.
Yeah, you think about how much you never, you know, if you don't go out and make an effort to touch the earth, you know, you live your most of your life walking on concrete. You know,
exactly.
They've completely lifted us off of the earth where we're from, you know, where we come from, and we've lost all contact with it, and that's returning to nature. That's what we're waking up to realize we need to do. We've gone too far. It's out of balance.
Definitely. Yes, it's out of balance. No doubt. Yeah, it's a trip. You know, the earth is like the source of energy, right? And then we're the batteries. So, you know, grounding is extremely important. I mean, yeah, the sun and energy, that's all connected. We're all connected. You know, we're not separate from nature. Truly, we're not separate from nature. But when you're out of balance and you're in the extreme polarity, there's going to be consequences by law, by the laws of nature. And if you break natural law, which, you know, even diet and eating and daily habits, you can break the laws of nature, right? Like not even grounding, for instance, wearing tennis shoes with the rubber soles, right? You totally disconnected from the natural energies and the connection that you would have just solely on the dirt and the ground of the earth. And there's effects for that, right? That's why grounding has proven to relieve inflammation, anxiety, all kinds of stuff. So, yeah, it's fascinating. It goes deep. And hemp and cannabis, marijuana, I mean, it's just a phenomenal plant, man. It's definitely a magical plant.
Well, yeah, and then there's the whole point of that we have an endocannabinoid system in our body. So if you're the scientifically minded type, like there's proof that we're meant to take this thing. You know, we're meant to eat. I mean, it has all the same amino acids that you get from like eating like the perfect meal, you know, whatever that is. I mean, you can get it from the hemp plant. I mean, you could technically just live off the hemp plant, you know.
Sure.
It's wild.
Yeah. This is what Jesus was slanging, man.
Yeah, right.
He was like the original Rick Simpson.
The Rick Simpson oil.
Yeah, man.
Oh, hey, I'm gonna try something just for fun. I'm gonna try to share my screen.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that cool?
Yeah. Let me know if it allows it. I don't know what my setting is.
It says you disabled it.
Oh, okay.
So that's I can't do it. That's fine.
No, I can do it right now. I can let you do it.
Yeah.
Right. Where's it at?
The Hempisode.
It used to just
it's all good. I don't have to share it. It was just an experiment. It's just an article. So the article is the world's first plane made and powered by hemp is 10 times stronger than steel. And this came out in August 5th of 2019, before the world went to shit. Hemp Earth, the Canadian cannabis firm, has designed the world's first plane made and powered by hemp, the non-psychoactive member of the cannabis family, 10 times stronger than steel. Interestingly, everything from the seats, the wings, the plane walls, and even the pillows are made from hemp. The plane, with a wingspan of 36 feet, can hold 1 pilot and 4 passengers. What's more, it runs on 100% hemp oil. What? Oh yeah, because you can make, like Henry Ford made a car completely out of hemp. There was like a model of Ford that was completely out of hemp, except for the metal parts. You know?
Wow.
So
it's amazing.
Hemp is lighter than traditional aerospace materials, such as aluminum and fiberglass, and therefore requires a lot less fuel to reach a high altitude. Most importantly, hemp is non-toxic, sustainable. That's a big word. Requires way less water and land to grow than cotton, and compared to steel or carbon fiber, has almost no environmental impact. I want to say something about that, about the environment. That's the other thing that's huge about this, because technically this episode is a conspiracy heresy episode, because this is one of the solutions. It's one of the huge conspiracies, but it's also one of the solutions to the problem. But what it does is it shows you that we don't have a scarcity problem in the world that they want to make us believe, right? We're just using the wrong industries. We've just been led by the wrong people. But if we subsidized hemp, right? And hemp was the cash crop that we built our country off of. And I mean, forget the government again, because we're Natural Freedom League, a sustainable society can, run off this. This is the other thing, because the labor was so costly with hemp, they stopped using it. I mean, just think about that. How many jobs would it create, right? I mean, Jack Herer was kind of thought of to be crazy in the beginning, because he would go around saying it could save the world. And he did this for the rest of his life. I do believe he passed on, I think within the last 10 years or so, maybe even before that. I don't know. I'm getting old. But, just think about that. I mean, that is like, I was kind of there in the beginning, when I heard about this conspiracy, that this is like, again, there's abundance. We have abundance. We're just using the wrong stuff. We were using the wrong materials. Like, everything is built perfectly here in nature, right? Yeah. We're messing it up. Man is messing it up. Man isn't improving it.
That's the thing. And they've been doing this for a very long time, is the whole scarcity, right? Scarce. They're scaring you into a fear-based mentality where there's not enough, which puts you in the reptilian mind, right? The base level of consciousness in survival, where you have to grind and work your ass off to get what you can. But it's only on certain things, right? They have the whole the scarcity, like fossil fuels, which is another rabbit hole that, it's like this is the blood of the earth. It's not fucking fossil fuels from dinosaurs and that kind of shit, but they make you believe that it's limited. Yeah. All kinds of things, man. It's just crazy. And they do that with the human body as well. Yeah. Look at your immune system now, right? There's a scarcity. Your immune system doesn't operate properly. So it's, you need their product. So it's all the same bullshit, just different style. Yeah. So, and like you said, it comes down to education, to lead one out of what? Of ignorance into the light, from the dark into the light of knowledge, understanding, and then wisdom, which is action.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You think about, how people, the stigma that was on marijuana, right?
Oh
Even
my
up
gosh.
till, it really became mainstream again, and probably, it was always there, right? But at least for me, because I grew up in the 80s, there was a sense of, a kind of squareness, right? Even though everyone was doing coke, but it was like, at least for me, it was like, it wasn't in the mainstream. It was just say no. It was kind of a reefer madness time again, in the 80s with Reagan and everything. And I grew up in the heart of that. And then, but it was like when Dre came out with the Chronic, right? Because even NWA had a song where Dre says, I don't smoke weed or cess, right?
Yeah.
And then he comes out with the Chronic with Snoop Dogg in the early 90s, and then it was like marijuana was, in the mainstream again, right?
Yeah.
But it was still stigmatized, and it even still is to this day. So point being, there was an article that came out this week talking about how they think that hemp or marijuana, cannabis, is causing heart problems now, that it's causing these heart attacks. So they're trying to scapegoat it for the needle craft, right? We all know it's the needle craft, but now all of a sudden, after thousands of years of using this, this plant, right? And that no one's ever said that it causes heart attacks ever. They've actually said it doesn't cause any deaths. And then now all of a sudden, and I was thinking, this is probably why they made it legal, right? A part of the reason, right? They have multiple agendas, but I'm like, this could be why they did the push to legalize it finally on a recreational level. So now they can say, oh yeah, it's from smoking the vape pen.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's a trip. That's one thing to mention too. We're in California, so we've had cannabis clubs for a long time, and I remember in the 90s, one person had a medical card. They could bring in a guest, and like one guest, and I was always the one guest. I didn't actually have the card, but it was still easy to get the card. But now, you can just get it delivered, anytime. But it's something to keep in mind too about the growers, and like where you're getting your cannabis from, and how is it grown. You gotta apply that logic to that as well. Monsanto's got its dirty little fucking paws everywhere, and Bill Gates is buying up all the farmland in the United States. So it's, I'm all about, grow your own, commune with the earth, commune with the plants, get to know the plants on that spiritual level as well. And, hemp cannabis is feminine energy. I believe it's a water element, and, it's about it. Its benefits is wisdom and creativeness and all kinds of stuff, man. The volatile oils of cannabis, the terpenes, are just healing on a whole different level. So, and if you get bad shit, it can be abused. Anything can be abused. So I'm not saying, if you smoke weed, you're not spiritual, or you have to smoke weed to be spiritual. It's not about that at all. It's about building a relationship with a sacred plant.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, well, I think we could wrap it up there, man. I just been wanting to shout out this book, and I figured a good time to do it would be on episode 42.0. Hey,
the Hempisode.
The Hempisode. The
Cue
Hempisode.
Dre music.
Dun,
Cue the Chronic.
But you can only do that for a few seconds before you get a copyright strike,
Yeah, that's right.
But the Emperor Wears No Clothes. I know you guys get the reference, right? The Emperor's new clothes, right? What are the Emperor's new clothes? Hey, he's not wearing any clothes, right? It's like, hey, we need oil. We need to go to war for oil. We need, like all this. There's all this scarcity. There's not enough oil. We're gonna run out of oil, dude. The Emperor wears no clothes, bro. we got it solved right here. You know,
exactly. That's hella funny too, because that's like a allegory for the fallacy, the appeal to authority, right? Where all the adults are like, oh, you know, oh yeah, the emperor's got clothes on, and the little kids are like, that motherfucker's got no clothes on.
Yeah, I know.
Calling them out. So
I know it almost needs to be the subtitle, you know, the Hempisode, the emperor wears no clothes, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jack Herer, you know, look him up. What was the book that you had mentioned?
It was, give me 1 second. Hemp and the Marijuana Conspiracy by John Jiggins. Jigggens.
Yeah, man. And John Jiggins is here to tell you that the jig is up. One other thing I was going to mention was I saw this, it was KTVU News, Channel 2, Bay Area, Channel 2 News, and they were doing an old episode about how in the Bay Area at around 1945, right around the time that World War II came to a close, that there was a train system in the Bay Area. And it was similar to the train systems on the East Coast. Like in Boston, you've got the little L trains and they just run, you know, they're old school trains. Mm-hmm. The Bay Area had a system like that. You could live in Pleasant Hill in the East Bay and take a train all the way to the water and then get on a ferry and go work in the city. And a lot of people did that, commuted like that. In 1945, they ripped all those tracks out. And that was when they built all the freeways. You know, I mean, I'm sure there was already roads there, but I mean, it was like a clear decision that the oil industry, right, automobiles was going to be the thing, you know, building these roads, paving over everything, right? And then, you know, now we have a train system, BART, but I mean, it sounds like that train system was just as efficient, if not more efficient than BART. You know, so clearly, I mean, it, you know, probably couldn't go underwater, right? But still, it could still have served a purpose. Possibly we wouldn't have needed as many roads. But again, when you're in a city area like this, you know, they're constantly expanding and, you know, building more and compacting everything. So
which they want compact, you know, dense cities.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's the smart cities.
Yeah, man. You know, people got to understand that there are think tanks. There's always been think tanks, right? Because there's always been a class of human beings that controls the majority of people, which is the slave class. So these think tanks, you know, they work in tandem. They get together and they discuss, you know, where they're going to influence and take, you know, the society. Civilization. So yeah, they did that with hemp. So.
Clearly there was decisions being made and they took us down one path when there could have been a more natural path that could have allowed for technology to still evolve and the economy to still evolve, you know, but not, you know, destroying the environment and not, you know, being wasteful. And so anyway, we're trying to think sustainable. That's the end of the Hempisode. Thank you, Will.
Yeah, brother. Good one, man. Good topic.
Yeah, that was fun. Again, The Emperor Wears No Clothes. Check it out. And you can check us out on naturalfreedomleague.com. And always remember, put something good in the air and plant something good in the earth. Peace.
Cheers.
We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison, a prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison, a prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we